Hey guys, Joe here, back to the Word, and in this video, we're doing a book review of this work right here, Essentials of Christian Theology, Foundations of the Christian Faith by Nathan D. Holsteen, Michael J. Svigel, published by Bethany House, which is an imprint of Baker Publishing Group. I just finished this basic introduction to Christian theology, really enjoyed it, and want to share it with you guys via this review. My channel is Back to the Word, and this channel exists to equip and encourage you to read the Bible, good books like this one, and have conversations that truly matter. You want more content from me in your feed, subscribe, hit that notification bell. You know what to do. So let's hop into my normal review segments of books, and then I'll talk more about this one specifically as we go through those sections, which are all time-stamped if you want to hop ahead. So first up, who is this for? What's the audience this book is written for? This book is a Christian doctrine primer, so an introduction specifically for down-to-earth people in our pew, in our family who are curious about theology. It's less than 300 pages, very clear writing, very easy to access. Pulling from one of the endorsements, it really does serve as an introduction to Christian theology for readers unsure of what theology is, what it's for, and why it's necessary. If you're a normal subscriber to my channel, that may not be you. You may have thicker works, bigger works of theology on your shelf, but you have someone in your family, in your church, who probably would really benefit from this work. So I want you to consider maybe getting it, reading it. Maybe you're a youth pastor, you'll read this, and then you'll buy some and give some out to your students through your book stall or whatever you have at your church. It's very helpful. And we all have people in our lives, in our families, even if this isn't for you, you have someone this will meet exactly where they are as an introduction to Christian theology. Which gets us into question, if you're going to recommend it to someone, who wrote it and kind of what's their perspective on Christian theology. So it was written by Nathan D. Holsteen, who's an adjunct professor of theological studies at Dallas Theological Seminary. He's the co-editor of Exploring Christian Theology Trilogy, so more on that in a moment. And he's contributed chapters to many edited works, and he lives with his family in Fort Worth, Texas. And also Michael J. Svigel is a chair and professor of theological studies at Dallas Theological Seminary, and he has written numerous books, Bible study guides, articles, and papers, and he lives with his family in Garland, Texas. And so just briefly, kind of perspective on this is two guys from Dallas Theological Seminary, other faculty from Dallas Theological Seminary, which is non-denominational, multiple people from different faith backgrounds coming together for education. And what they've done with this book is they've tried to leave denominational type of things out of it and talk about foundational Christian doctrine theology things that Christians who are Orthodox, Protestant, Bible-believing Christians would have in common. And I think they've done a really great job with this work. They've taken three longer works. They're kind of Exploring Christian Theology Trilogy that was also done with Bethany House, and they've kind of condensed it down into this one volume, and I think they did an excellent job. So with that, let's hop into what stands out, because I want to talk about first their chapter subjects, so what the 6 key chapters and main chapters in this book are, what doctrines they cover, and then also how they've formatted each chapter, and both stand out, and I think they did a great job on both of those things. So first up, here's the chapter subjects that they've kind of chosen and how the book is laid out. They do a short introduction on what this work is, what their scope is, and what their kind of goals are for the work. They do a very short prelude to the biblical storyline, talk about the biblical drama in 3 acts, kind of creation, fall, recreation, those sorts of things. And then they get into 6 main chapters that hit on Christian theology and doctrine things. So chapter 1 is a firm foundation on the doctrine of Scripture. Chapter 2, God in 3 persons, the doctrine of the Trinity. And then chapter 3, fashioned and fallen, so the doctrine of humanity, so anthropology type of things, but also the doctrine of sin, so hamartiology. Then you get into chapter 4 is saved by grace through faith, so that's kind of the doctrine of justification and those sorts of things. Chapter 5, the communion of the saints, gets into the church, so ecclesiology, and then also growing family of God and how we mature and grow as Christians. And then chapter 6 is the world to come and gets into future things, eschatology things, those sorts of discussions. How they've formatted each chapter is really something I appreciated with the book, and I found it really helpful, and why I would really recommend it to so many in my family and my church is that they've made it accessible. So they start every chapter out with a kind of in short section that kind of briefly summarizes what that doctrine is, points of unity and diversity among different Christian groups and different Christian denominations on that doctrine. Then they get into passages to ponder, which kind of explains key scriptures related to each doctrine. This was really helpful list. So if you're trying to explain or talk about the doctrine of the Trinity from different passages, and you're like, what passages in my Bible speak to and to kind of help us construct a doctrine of the Trinity, you can go to this chapter, that section of the chapter, and get a list of those passages, and even more, they have some listed in that section. Then they move in every chapter to a realities to remember. So this really presents kind of foundational truths and kind of summarizes what lots of those passages have been talking about, and really easy to understand terms and definitions. Then they get into errors to avoid, which exposes false teachings associated with those doctrines specifically. So Christological things in the Christology section, Trinity, God type of things in that. They get into things like how Christians differ from Mormons, how Christians differ from Muslims, how Christians differ, the errors of Jehovah's Witnesses. Those sorts of things are all covered, and even more in the errors to avoid section in the different, doctrinal segments and chapters. And then they get into lessons to live, how we can apply that doctrine to our life and how we should be living in our Christian life. And then at the very end, they do a snapshot of history, which is kind of a table. I'll see if I can find one real quick. That just kind of summarizes, there's one, just in table format at different eras in church history and how that doctrine kind of was talked about, developed, and those sorts of things from that era of church history is at the end of each chapter. So those are really cool things. They did a great job. They do end with a conclusion. So that's all the main chapters. And then they have a conclusion on where do you go from here, recommendations. So they want this to be a launch pad for Christians studying theology who don't know where to start. So they want you to start here and then choose something. If you're a Baptist, something more Baptist. If you're Presbyterian, you can choose something more Presbyterian. This is a great foundation. And then you can go on from there. And they've made recommendations in that conclusion section. So they've broken them down into beginner, intermediate, and advanced options. And I think they had a really great list and did a really good job with that section as well. Other things that stand out about the work, aside from, the chapter contents and how they formatted each chapter, would be its clear writing. I think this is accessible, easy to read, and will minister to many in your church. Students, others who are curious about Christian theology and don't know where to start, this would be an excellent book to get, read yourself, and then recommend and give to others. I also really enjoyed their helpful illustrations. They have multiple ones throughout, kind of like this type of thing, that are just designed and edited for kind of explanation things. There's one on the Trinity. So those are really helpful and bring concepts to life because they're written and illustrated in a helpful way. I also really appreciated certain chapters that they could have gotten into things more deeply in certain denominational ways, but they kept it more broad. And I'm glad what they said, the things they said, but I'm also glad that they omitted and didn't say certain things as well, because they wanted it to be more general. So specifically, I really enjoyed the chapter on the Trinity, lots of the passages to ponder type of things, lots of the errors to avoid. Those were very helpful for reminders in that chapter. I appreciated in the church type of things, there was lots of unity that they showed in those chapters. And they talked about, yes, we're going to, denominations disagree on who a valid candidate for baptism is, and they don't get into those discussions, but there's lots of unity when it comes to the church type of things. They focus on that in the ecclesiology church chapter, and I really did appreciate kind of their basics to the point when it came to ecclesiology and last things. They go over parts of unity, things that we all believe, that the bodily return of Jesus Christ to rule and reign, and then they briefly overview things like different millennial views, different end times views, in a way that just surveys the landscape and allows you to have that as a basic foundation for further study as you go forward in your theological development. So I really just appreciated those topics, those chapters, and what they said, but also what they did not say, as they kept it more general and helpful to all Christian denominations and audiences. So what are some kind of critiques, as I just want to end this video, some things that I think would have improved this volume and made it just a little bit better. So first, it has endnotes. So if you know my channel well, you know I love good footnotes. Yes, I know what they were trying to do here. They were trying to kind of minimize the notes that they were giving people to keep it more simple. I would have preferred footnotes. I know by doing endnotes, it actually saves the publisher money and page count and all those sorts of things. But I love good footnotes and would have preferred footnotes in this volume. Also, I think it would have been served well. I know it would have increased the page number, but with a glossary of helpful Christian theology terms. I think that could have made this volume a little bit better. I also would appreciate a subject index, which they do not have in this volume. Yes, it's pretty easy to navigate and find what you're looking for, but I think a subject index, even as I've read it a few days ago, and if I wanted to go to the section on the errors regarding Mormons or certain things with Muslims and like all those things, Jehovah's Witnesses that I just mentioned, I don't know if I could find that super easy, and I think a subject index would have served well for people kind of searching for things that they knew were in here and knew that they read, but didn't know exactly where it was. And so those things are kind of critiques, not bad things about the book, but things I think that could have been done to improve this single volume right here. So that ends my review segment of this book specifically. I'm going to put some of my thoughts in a written blog post, and so once that blog post is ready, it'll be linked in the video description below. You have further questions, comment them, and I'll try to answer them if I do have the answers. I'll also put the product link to this book in the description of this video, so you can go there and check it out. Available wherever good books are sold. If you have a favorite introduction to theology book, I would love to hear about it. So hear your recommendations in the comments below. So with that, until next time, continue to read, treasure, follow the word. God bless, and I'll see you guys soon.